Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the final session of the first day. You made it. Woohoo! All kinds of parties tonight. You guys got your parties planned out you're going to? Yeah? Mine's going to be sleeping, I think. That's what. This is session 3 today. So, and I have to present with this guy, Craig Gilgrass.
Uncalled for.
Uncalled for, I know. So my name is Jeff Shaner, and this is obviously the Workforce for ArcGIS introduction session. How many of you have used Workforce for ArcGIS? A few of you, a couple of you. Collector? Wow, quite a few. Survey123? Any navigators? A couple of navigators, all right. Well, when we started to look at building Workforce, it was really to complement those other applications, right? To provide a way for you to kind of guide your mobile workforce into doing the activities that they need to do each day and know where they are and where they've been and when they're working and when they're not. So what we wanted to do is kind of go through the overall process of using Workforce within your organization, the integration with those other applications, how the different roles come together to provide that solution around Workforce. Because Workforce, though it can stand alone, is much stronger when it's combined with the other applications that we provide. So these are just kind of the value statements that we put around Workforce today. You know, things like being able to optimize your daily field operations using the ArcGIS platform, knowing where your workers are and where they've been. How many people in the audience here have or need a location tracking based solution in their organization? Quite a few of you. Okay. Now, you may or may not have been aware that Workforce provides a smartphone-based solution for that. We can leverage the location on your device to know the last known location of every mobile worker and optionally record their location tracks so you know where they've been as well, independent of the work that they actually complete. But you put the two of them together and then now you can do some interesting analysis as well. So using the ArcGIS platform, really, you can efficiently plan, coordinate, and assign work. And you'll discover as we go along today that Workforce really just leverages the platform and leverages the architecture that we have in place with maps and services to bring that all to life. And of course, there's not just a back office component, which we'll talk about, but there's a mobile component that runs on iOS and Android devices today. Just some of the different types of ways that our customers have been using Workforce. I'm going to focus in on one specific use case after this slide, but I wanted to talk first about a few different ways. We kind of, in our original designs for Workforce, focused in on that top left one, collection and asset maintenance, being able to go and organize the field workforce that needs to do day-to-day activities where they're, you know, maybe it's doing water maintenance work within a utility or even looking at things like event management. And each of these are kind of success stories or articles that we've written about publicly that you can go read more about. The middle one is from the city of Clarkston, where they were using Workforce to kind of organize the volunteers that were out as they were having a festival, marking off the locations of permitted vendors along the festival locations that they were set up for and that sort of thing. So interesting different types of use cases. The third one that I wanted to mention, the one on the bottom right, is for situational awareness, and it really goes to that location tracking solution. So within, does anyone here live in Oklahoma for starters? I can't say too much bad about Oklahoma now. Chris Rogers is in the room. And Chris is with the Oklahoma Department of Public Safety. And every state trooper within the state of Oklahoma has Workforce running on their Android smartphone. And when Chris saw this, he saw Workforce as an opportunity to provide that location tracking, that situational awareness, that Blue Force tracker, as he refers to it, within their organization. So you can see the last known location of every mobile worker. That mobile worker happens to be a state trooper. Some interesting things happen in the state of Oklahoma, as we found from talking to Chris. The one use case I wanted to kind of deep dive onto is an organization called Rice Energy up in Pennsylvania. Rice Energy is a midstream petroleum customer that is leveraging Workforce Collector and Navigator as part of their daily operations. And there's some interesting things about what they do. That top left picture, is anyone here do gas pipeline work? A couple of you. Then you probably recognize what's going on there. That's a pigging operation where they shove a pig down the pipeline for a couple of reasons. Cleaning it being one thing that they do as part of that work. So they use Workforce to kind of time the pigging operation, surprisingly. They do...
I have a question.
Oh, God.
What happens to the pig?
I don't even know how I want to answer that one. It is a rubber pig that they insert into the pipeline.
I just thought I'd clarify for everyone.
It's not a live pig, and no, there's no roast or anything that happens afterwards. But it is gassed, yes. So in addition to the pigging operations, they do road crossing inspections, valve inspections. They even use Collector inside of the compressor station to do their instrument inspections. You can see one of the private roads off to one of their well pads, so they navigate off to the well pad. The other interesting thing that they do is they do their one-call reports with Workforce and Collector. So in the state of Pennsylvania, a one-call report is received by email, and I believe they actually get an XML feed as well. They script that coming in as a new work assignment into Workforce. So one of the field workers will go out and they'll do the staking operation for the one call. And they'll do this with Collector in a way that when they get to that location and something unexpected happens and they need to make an observation, maybe someone else needs to come back out and do work, they'll mark that with Collector. When that observation is synchronized back into their organization, actually they use Portal for ArcGIS, when it's synchronized back, based upon their standard operating procedures, a Python script will actually create a new work assignment for someone else to be dispatched out to do work. So they can do this round trip where a lot of the work happens, or the work assignment happens through automated processes with scripting. And then they also have their operation supervisors that will manually assign work as things come up during the day. So they can do both of those using the ArcGIS platform. And each quarter, they take all of that information, because one of Rice Energy's, although I've heard recently that they're being acquired by EQT, one of their competitive advantages was actually not having contractors. And for them, being able to do an analytics against the amount of time that was spent out in the field doing different types of work was very beneficial to them. Apparently not efficient enough. There's no one from Rice here, I hope. So with that, kind of as what people do and the different ways that we see Workforce being used in action, we're going to have Craig demonstrate Workforce to you now. What number 4?
Number 4. Okay, thanks, Jeff. So yeah, I'm going to take you through a case study, an example from one of our customers who's using Workforce, and an example of what they did and the value that they saw from it. I'm going to walk through a bunch of the all different roles that we have for Workforce and talk about what's available for each role and some of the things that came up when we talked to the customer and other customers as we went through. So what you see here is the Workforce web application. I'm currently signed in as a dispatcher. That's one of the roles that Jeff talked about. So in that role, my job is to create work assignments, manage work assignments for the people who are out in the field, and also be able to monitor their progress, react to any events that come up throughout the day if I need to redistribute work. But it's essentially that person who's in the central office, in the back office. If it's winter, they're nice and warm. If it's the summer, they're nice and cool, so they're not too concerned about what sort of weather the mobile workers have to deal with. So they're in a very sort of comfortable position, kind of looking at everything that's going on. When you think about how the dispatcher works, and a lot of the dispatchers that we went and actually looked at during our research of Workforce, they'd usually have some sort of list of work to do. Now that could range anywhere from an Excel spreadsheet, and it's really interesting how many people are using Excel as a way to manage mobile work and field workers, right? It gives you a list, everybody's very comfortable with spreadsheets, you're able to sort it, filter on it very quickly and easily. So we saw a lot of common themes that people were used to using lists, especially their dispatchers, to be able to manage that work and see it. And that could go all the way up to, say, a full work order management system, like something that's running on SAP, or could be IBM Maximo or Oracle. But that common theme of being able to see a list of the work and a regular and well-defined set of information that's associated with the work. And you can see that here with the Workforce web app. Down the left-hand side of the screen, I've got a list of the work assignments that are going to be completed in this project, and I can easily scroll through that and see what's there. You can see I'm presented with a little bit of information about each work assignment. So the type of work that's being done, the location, in this case, the address of the work, and also other information such as its priority or when it's due. On the right-hand side, I've also got the map that's displaying all of the locations of the work assignments to be done. Now, what I'm displaying here is about 5,000 work assignments, and this is a meter replacement and inspection program that would go on at this particular site each summer. Traditionally, this would take anywhere from 4 to 6 months, depending on the number of meters they need to replace. Now, this site also regularly schedules inspections for a lot of the gas appliances. If the people who are having their meters replaced would like them to come in and make sure that the gas appliances are still in working order. So they're trying to take advantage of the workers being out in the field to do both the meter replacement and then also inspections to perform on those different appliances. So when we were talking to this customer, in this case, the user's name was Jordan, who got this project up and running. We said to Jordan, the way to think about this is, how do you do your work today? What are the different type of work assignments that your dispatchers and your workers talk about? So they talk about things like they've got inspection-only work, and you can see up at the top that I'm highlighting here, that's an example of a work assignment for it. They've also got cases where they've got water meter changes and inspections combined. So the type of work that they're doing is essentially that common language that the dispatcher and the mobile workers are using to talk to one another back and forth. So what he said was, we typically do anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 meter replacements and inspections throughout the summer, and they loaded all of those up using the Python scripts, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and loaded those up into the Workforce projects. We've got all 5,000 here that they're able to see and visualize, and now get a good idea of the distribution throughout the city. These are all clustered so that we can easily see sort of how this information is there and displayed on the map. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. I'm going to turn the clustering off, so it kind of gives you an idea of the density of the work that's being done there, right? So one of the things we wanted to do with Workforce was also make it really easy to visualize the work to be done. How easy is it to look at that and get a sense of it's not? I'm already getting some heads of like, that's no good, right? So right away we came up with this idea of being able to cluster those so you can get a rough idea of the distribution around to make it a little easier to view that information. Now the other piece that we heard from people was that commonly what they'd like to do is, as the list changes, the list is what they use to drive the work that they're discovering. They want to see the list and the map work together to really refine that down. So as I go in and actually change my assignment list to only show me the work that's currently assigned, you can see my list has changed a little bit, but also the map has changed, so I'm only displaying that work that's currently assigned. So I can easily use the list to apply different filters to both the list and the map so that I can easily refine down to see the information that I'm really interested in. Okay? In this case, all of the work assigned to the one call worker that's currently set here. So it's really quick and easy for me to be able to go in and just refine that list so that you can focus in on the work that you need to do and the work that the dispatcher wants to get assigned. All right, so that's cool. So we talked a little bit about the list and giving an introduction to that. Talked about the map a bit and how they work together and how you can use the filter options up top. We've also got several sort options that allow you to be able to sort the list as well, because it's very important to view that list in different sorting orders that are available to you. You can also go in and filter this based on, say, individual street locations. So just quickly get down to that list that's there. So working with the list is really quick and simple to be able to filter it. Now, one of the things we heard with a lot of field management is that there's really two basic types of work that gets done. There's planned work, and then there's unplanned work. This is a great example of planned work, right? In their asset management system, someone made the decision that these were the meters that were going to get replaced this year. Now, that decision was based on some criteria that went into the date of installation, how old it is, the manufacturer, age of end of warranty, end of life, those types of things. So a great example of planned work. Someone made a decision, they met, figured out the work to be done, and loaded all of that up into Workforce. And now the dispatcher is able to easily see that information and get it assigned to the right workers. But the other type of work is unplanned work, right? Things happen throughout the day. How many people work for a municipality or a city? Not too many. How many people are sick of being asked questions? One person in the back. Oh, good, yes, already. You're going to get really sick when Jeff gets the mic back, trust me. So a real common theme we hear at city and municipalities is there's always one person. There's one homeowner, hopefully they're not in the room, who's always calling their city councilman, right, or councilwoman, the council person, to say, that pothole's not filled in front of my house. And they call every day. And that's an example of unplanned work. And you could even say high priority unplanned work. Because that cancel person is tired of that person calling them every single day. And they contact the dispatcher to say, I need that taken care of, right? So we're not doing pothole infilling here, but we are doing things like meter replacement and inspection. So there could be an example where you have that kind of person who's constantly calling and would like that done. And you need to fire up and create a new, in this case, we'll just do an inspection for their house. So I'll go and create a new work assignment for them. So the first thing that I need to do is specify the type of work that's going to be done. In this case, it's going to be the inspection. I can also either search for an address or I can click a location on the map. I'll just go place the location on the map right here. You can see it geocodes to give me the address. I can also go in and actually edit this a little bit. So I can say it's actually 1021. I could say, let's see, we'll say southeast corner of this particular location. And we know where it is, so we don't have to add that. So I can go and update that location really quickly and easily. So the location of the map, that shape on the map has not changed, right? I'm just updating the text that's associated with that location. Now the next thing that I could do is I can fill in some more information about this assignment. And one of the things I can do is actually give it a priority. In this case, it's a high priority because we really want that person to stop calling, the council person. I could also choose and go and give it a due date and time. When we talk to people, we heard there's several different ways that you categorize work. Sometimes it's based on priority, right? And a relative priority. This work is low and can wait a while. This stuff is high and needs to be taken care of now. The other example is that, no, you've actually got both firm and soft dates that you need to meet. Okay? This is an example of us modeling soft dates. Okay? So the due date is there. It's available to the mobile worker, which you'll see in a little bit. Okay? But it's not a hard date, right? As in, once they pass that due date, the phone doesn't start exploding and vibrating on them and flashing and making all sorts of noises. Okay? So it's more of a guidance. You should take care of this by a certain point in time. The requirement to do a hard date is something that we've got in our backlog that we're looking at. But for now, we're just sort of satisfying it as just this due date. So I could go and specify that as well, and I'll say Friday, and we'll give it a time, 11 a.m. Now, when we went to a number of different sites, and one of the things we asked them was, can we take a look at your paper work orders, your paper service requests that you print out and give to your workers? There's a couple things that were in common with everything that we saw. Obviously, there was a type of work and who should be doing it that I showed, but a couple of things that jumped out was every single one of those pieces of paper had an ID of some sort. Now, you can call that whatever you like, and we've got a little pop-up that talks about this, that the ID is actually the work order ID. Okay? It could be a service request ID. It could be a job number. Essentially, it's any alphanumeric number or character or string that designates that work, right? It's how you talk about things within your company. I mentioned that the dispatcher and the workers talk about the common work they do, right? Now, a lot of times they'll actually go and say, hey, I'm over at the southeast corner of 1021 John Counter Boulevard. But we also heard a lot of times they're talking about this unique ID, right? So they're saying, I'm actually doing service request 876 right now. So they're not talking about the address, right? Because you might have multiple pieces of work that are being done at that address or might be scheduled over a period of time. So you want to talk about that particular ID. So this is an ID for you to use to be able to populate as you need and you see fit. And I'll talk a little bit about ways you can do that through Python through the back end to pull that in from other systems. The other common thread we saw was that every single one of those pieces of papers had a big place on it for write a bunch of stuff about what the worker needs to do. And that's what this description field is. Okay? This is where you can go and enter in really descriptive information about what they need to do. We'll say this is an inspection for high priority council person. But you can go and add more information in there. Does anybody deal with USA 1 tickets or 1 calls for call before you dig? Yeah, so you guys get like emails with all the information that's contained within it, right? The email is pretty exhaustive. There's a lot of information in there. For anybody who's a homeowner, that's the person who shows up at the house and actually notes where the underground utilities are, primarily the gas mains, so that when you don't get a permit to put a deck in, you don't rupture a gas main, because then the city would really know you're putting a deck in, right? Not that I did that, but just saying hypothetically you might do that. So what happens is they get these USA 1 call tickets, these emails that come out. There's a lot of information that's in it. The entirety of that email can go in the description field here, right? So 4,000 characters, lots of space for it. If, however, you need more than that, you actually want to attach full-blown reports that people need in the field, or you want to maybe give them planner drawings of how people have previously done work at sites, you can actually go and attach a file to it. And this file could be a PDF. It could be anything that's supported through attaching documents through ArcGIS, okay? So we give you lots of ways to get the information to the mobile worker and get it onto their device. So now that I've got everything set up, I'm going to go and create an assignment. And there we go. I'm going to create that new assignment. A really great example of unplanned work, right? Nobody made a decision ahead of time that this was something we had to plan to take care of today. Circumstances changed, whatever they might be. My sort of hypothetical example of that really annoyed homeowner calling in, where we had to take care of it and get it into the system right away and right now. So that talks a little bit about how dispatchers can sort of view that information, take a look at it, get a good sense of where things are, and create unplanned work, and also look at the planned work. But I'm going to head back here and talk a little bit about what happens when the dispatcher actually needs to assign work and get that into the hands of the mobile worker. So I'm going to head over and I'm going to do just a little bit of, there we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go and set up and pick a couple locations that we want to highlight. We'd like to assign that to one of our workers. So when we were visiting this particular customer, we talked to them about, how do you dispatch, how do you assign work? And what happens every day is the dispatcher's name was Carrie, and the supervisor's name was Carl. Carl and Carrie would sit down, and they'd have their Excel spreadsheet in front of them, and they'd say, all right, let's figure out the work we need to break down. And that would normally take them quite a bit of time, because it's in an Excel spreadsheet. So they'd sort of figure out some different categories on it. But once they moved over to Workforce for it, it was a lot easier for them. Carl liked to have his crews together, so he liked them to take care of individual blocks. This is a little bit canned, because I know I'm going to assign everything on Ruskin Street, right? But what they would do is they would look for sections of streets with lots of unassigned work, and they would actually use the identify tool that we have that I'm hovering over right now to select a couple assignments and assign that to a particular worker. And that's how they worked, right? And it worked really well for them. So they were able to take their workflow from Excel and move that over to Workforce. Now you might have other examples, right? One that we commonly hear is you print up all the service requests and you drop them on a table at 7 a.m. and everybody drives into City Hall and picks up the service requests. And then you go out and head out for the day. And I'm seeing some heads nodding, so that's what some sites do. So there's different ways of doing that, right? The main point is that all the different ways you're working today in terms of getting the work into the mobile worker's hands can work with Workforce. Instead of printing up those service requests, you take a look at them on a map, right? And you divvy up the area. I'll take the northeast quadrant, you take the southeast. Me and Jack will head over to the northwest. Okay? So I've got these 9 assignments that I want to get assigned. I've got them selected here in the list. I'm going to go and choose who I'd like to select and assign that to. So what you see here is the worker drop-down list that allows you to see which workers you have currently in your project and what work they can do. So there's a couple things that I want to highlight here before we move on. The first one is that I can filter my workers up at the top. So I could start typing in here, and you see it. If I don't type anything that matches, it says no workers, but I can refine my list down. So if I've got maybe a dozen, 15 or so, or more that I want to manage, I can easily, quickly narrow it down to find a set of workers. What I can also see is over on the right-hand side, you can see that I've got some numbers next to those workers. That's their current workload, the current number of assignments that haven't been completed that they currently have. Okay? So I can see how much work they have so I can figure out who needs to be assigned work. In this case, we're going to give it to this person, Utility Services 1. You can also see a little bit of information down here. It's a little small for those of you at the back of the room, but that's actually the distance as the crow flies from where that worker is to where those assignments are. So to try to give you an idea, just roughly, about how close they are to it. You can see that I've also got them grouped into categories, in this case, whether they're working or not working. So Workforce on the mobile side has the ability for the worker to indicate whether they're currently on the job and working, can accept work, okay? Whether they're not working, so they're off and it's not their regular working hours, or if they're on a break, right, is the other status that we have if we had anyone on a break right now. So I'm going to go and choose this to assign this to Utility Services 1. And then when I do that, you'll see that they're no longer selected, and I've got the icon here for Utility Services 1 set up, and everything's assigned and all set. So now that I've got that set up and assigned, I'm going to jump out of the Dispatcher web app for a second, and I'm going to head over to the mobile web app so we can see how that would actually work on the mobile side. So here I've got Workforce Mobile. I'm running it on my iPhone that I've got right here. And here are those different assignments that I just assigned to the mobile worker. So there's a couple things that I want to point out that's available to the mobile worker on their device. One of the things we heard is that when people are talking about the work to do, the workers are always talking about what's my list of work to do today. And you can see right up at the top, we've got a little bit of a call to action at the top that talks about your work to do. Okay? So I can tap that and see the different options. I can also see any of the work that I've completed today. But I don't have any completed, so I'm just looking at my to-do work. We also provide them with the same sort of view that they had in the dispatcher. So you get a little bit of an overview about what that work is. In this case, you're able to see the type of work, whether it's an inspection only or a water meter change and an inspection, and the distance to it as well. So if I tap on one of those, I can actually see a little bit of information about it. You can see that I've got the status of that work assignment. I've also got the type of work as well up at the top. I've got it right here. I've got the address for it as well. And then I've got a little bit of information just right here. Now, this is actually the description field that I had set up for this work order. In this case, that's the actual asset identifier of the water meter that they're looking at and the type that's there. I can also see who assigned this work to me. Now, this isn't just a static map. I can actually move the panel up and down and actually interact with the map to get a better view of things if I need to zoom in. I might have some scale suppression on the map so that other layers come in and out as I zoom to it. But I can pull that back up to be able to see some other information that's here. Okay, so now that I'm here, what are some of the things that I can do with this? Well, I could start this work right away, but that's probably not all set to go because I'm not actually at the location yet, right? So in this case, what I'd like to do is actually navigate to the work assignment. So I'm going to go out and call Navigator, which is going to generate a route to my location, which I'll start. And we're just going to put that down for a second and talk about what's happened. So what's going on is my workforce project was pre-configured with a Navigator integration. Now what that means is all my assignments have the ability to call out to Navigator and provide me directions to where I'm going. So right now Navigator is giving me those turn-by-turn directions to that location. Now, if Navigator was not available on the device, then I wouldn't have that option to navigate to it. So a key piece about Workforce is that we see it being integrated with other apps. Navigator is one by default, but it's also integrated with both Collector and Survey123. Now, the reason that we do that is because Workforce is very much an app that allows you to get that to-do list, the work that the worker needs to do, into their hands so they can do that work. A lot of times, though, the work, the information they're collecting, it's not going to take place in Workforce. Think of Workforce like the collection of papers that they have with a list of the sites to visit, and they cross them off throughout the day, okay? But if they're going to actually collect work, inspect assets, create new surveys, that's what they're using those other apps for. So now that we've arrived at 11 Ruskin, you can see that Navigator is prompting me to return to Workforce, which I'll choose to do. And now that I'm back in Workforce, I'm going to go and start that assignment. Now, when I did that, hopefully you noticed up here, the actual status of that changed. And if you look at right next to here where the inspection is, you can see that it's also turned to green. That same status is available in Dispatcher in the web app. What we're doing is actually taking that information and writing that into the feature service so that both the worker sees they've started that work assignment, as well as that dispatcher sees that I'm now currently at this location and working on this particular inspection. Who else could see that? Anybody, well, you guys did say you were tired of questions, so that's cool. Anybody who's been given access to that feature service, like a stakeholder in your organization, okay? Would you really want your managers in Dispatcher creating work and assigning work to the field workers in the field? Probably not, right? That's a dispatcher's job. But they need to have a visibility into the system to be able to see what's going on. Because Workforce is built on feature services, both in online and enterprise, you can take that feature service and publish it into a dashboard. Now it's in a dashboard that you can make available to your managers, to your stakeholders in the organization who say, I want to know how well this project's going. Last year it took you guys 6 months. How far are we along now? Okay? So while we built Workforce with these specific roles in mind, and I've talked about 2 of them so far, there is this 4th role, which is the stakeholder who wants visibility into it. You take this feature service information, publish it into a dashboard, now you can share all of that with them. Okay? Now that I'm at this particular location and I've started it, I can call out, I can go and call out to the other apps that I've integrated with. In this case, I've chosen to integrate with Survey, and actually Survey at this location. So now that we open up that particular survey form, it's signed me in, it's going to go and download that survey. Oh, I haven't signed in. So if I had actually signed in ahead of time, that survey would be available for me. That's one piece to show, but the other piece that I want to highlight here, is I'll finish this inspection really quickly, is to actually head back to Workforce on my list and open up a different assignment. Okay? So take a look at the assignment type that I've got up here, right? I've got a water meter change and inspection, not just an inspection. Okay? On the previous assignment, I launched Survey123, which would let me fill in a survey about the inspection that's gone on. That's a really good use case for survey, right? You're asked a number of questions. Some of those questions might be conditional based on the age or the condition of that particular gas appliance that you're doing. But in this case, for this particular customer, whenever they did the water meter change, they'd also use Collector to actually drop a new water meter there to update their asset inventory when they were on site. So when I go and open up that overflow, you can see I'm also now provided with the ability to integrate with Collector for the assignment as well. So when I go and tap on Collector, you'll see what it does is actually brings me to that location and actually drops me on the location about where that assignment particularly is. So it opened up a particular web map and allowed me to drop a pin there where I can actually go and create the inspection for it. So that really demonstrates the different ways that you can take Workforce and integrate it, not just with Navigator out of the box, but also with Collector and Survey123. And specifically, you can make those integrations down to the level of the type of work that's being done. Okay? So that means you can have multiple types of work being done in a project, and you can call out to Survey123 or Collector or neither. So you can really start to combine the different types of work that you're doing. Maybe an example is that while these guys, the field workers, are there, they also need to turn valves. We have something in Canada called curb stops. And it's really just a valve, right, at the lateral to control the flow of water from the house. There's really nothing to collect, right? There's nothing to survey. What are you going to collect? Did you turn the valve? Yes, right? But it's an action to perform, it's work you want to track. That's a really good example of a work assignment you could have in this project where they need to know they actually have to go and rotate the curb stop to change the valve on it and make sure that it's exercised. But it's not something that you're going to collect and actually record in another app. Okay, so like I was showing before, I can go and start this assignment, and you can see things all set up. And I did this really quickly before, so I finish it, and you can see it brings me right back to my list so that I can work on my list to be able to change things. So a couple other things I like to highlight on the mobile app. You can see that I'm able to move between the list and the map. I've also got several sorting options that are available to me. By default, we sort based on priority, but we provide several different ways for the worker to be able to view their to-do list. And then, like I was mentioning before, the worker can actually change their status to be able to see. Whenever the workers are set to working, we see them moving around the map. Okay? So in real time, you can see those workers changing position. We turn that off when they're set to on break or not working. Because you probably don't want to see them moving around their house when they get home at the end of the day because they forgot to set, right? So we give them this ability that while they're working, you can see their location changing so that the dispatchers in the central office are able to see who's closest in real time to be able to see that information, okay? So we're not just looking at their static locations the last time we saw them, we're able to see them throughout the day as they're doing their work. For those, there's a few people who said that they implemented Workforce already. One of the things we see with sites that have is the moment that people get it, it's really not the stuff I've been talking about, right? That's for you who are implementing it to really add value to it. But when other people in your organization get it with Workforce is when they see those people moving. Check it out, I just saw them move, right? Look, you just started an assignment. I think she completed one over there. When you get everybody in the room for that first time to see people do it out in the trial, that's when you really see people get it and they see the value of it. So if you're looking at ways to really get Workforce into people's heads and get them thinking about it, do a trial run like that to set it up. This was a really good example of one that worked really well for this customer. It had a finite period of time. It was a 6-month project, okay? So if this didn't work and they didn't want to use it at all, there was no commitment, right? Because it was going to be done after 6 months. Now, what ended up happening is they actually shaved 2 months off this whole project. And the reason that they did that was because there's another example that came up with this. I talked about inspections. And of course, everybody's always at home when you schedule an inspection, right? You never ever, yeah, and they always show up on time. What'll happen is a lot of times they'll leave a door hanger if you're not there, right? So the door hanger is just what's hanging on the knob of your door to say, hey, we were here, we missed you, call us back to let us know. What would happen with this particular project is as the summer would go on, those missed inspections would pile up. So when the supervisor was asked, hey, Carl, how are you doing? I don't know. I don't know how many of those door hangers we have. They're sitting in trucks, the papers haven't been turned in yet. Some people haven't called. So their budget would always increase at the end of the year because they never knew when they were going to be done. What Workforce allowed them to do was whenever a worker got to a site and they actually said, we've got a scenario where we weren't able to get into the house, so we actually left a door hanger, what they would do is they would actually go mark the assignment as paused. They would then add a note to it saying that there's nobody home. Now, Carrie, the dispatcher, sees that. She sees that assignment's been paused. She can now tell Carl at the end of the day exactly how many paused assignments they have, how many inspections they're going to have to go back to. They're not piling up waiting till the end of the year. They actually hired 2 separate people to actually do this work throughout the year, and that's what let them finish this project 2 months early. Okay. So being able to take that information in real time about the status of work assignments and also the location of workers really allowed them to add value and see the cost benefit for getting workforce up and running because they were able to shave 2 months off. So now what happened at the lunchroom when those 8 field workers were talking to the other workers at this particular organization? Hey, how's that meter thing going that usually takes half a year? Oh, we're going to be done in 2 months. Well, what are you doing next? Well, we're moving off to something else. Now, suddenly, those other workers working on the other projects said, how are they able to get their stuff done so much faster than I was on that last year, and it took me 6 months, and it was no fun. Now the workers are going to the supervisors and saying, I want this GIS thing. I want this thing with the mobile apps that they're using, okay? So a lot of times those workers that traditionally you might think you're gonna have a hard time selling on, let them be your best salespeople for mobile solutions, including workforce, because they're gonna talk to each other and they're gonna get it, and then they're gonna start asking for it. So that's a quick introduction to workforce.
Quick?
Like 40 minutes.
You can put yourself on break, Craig. Put yourself on break right now, buddy.
I gave you an overview of dispatcher and the mobile worker. I'm going to pass back to Jeff, who's going to talk about some other stuff, and then we'll come back to me in a little bit. You guys said you didn't have any plans, so.
Yeah, we'll come back to you in a few slides so you can do another hour-long demonstration of how to create a workforce project. Thanks for that, Craig. So that's what we want to talk about next is really the whole concept of planning with workforce. So one of the things that's important that we talk to a lot of organizations about is that workforce is not a work management system, right? We're not going to do resource allocation. We're not going to do timesheet management with this product. We're not heading in that direction at all. But it's a way to fuse the work that you manage in your organization into the ArcGIS platform. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can script the whole back-end process of creating work assignments, as I think Craig mentioned when he droned on and on and on in that demo. In fact, I think some of those head nods were actually, you know, that jolt when you're starting to fall asleep and the monotone voice of a guy doing a demo, but maybe not. So you can use these Python scripts, and we've got them out in GitHub, and you can script the translation or the ETL from your work management system. In the case of the folks up in, was it Kingston, right? Utilities Kingston, that actually was a spreadsheet. But it might be IBM Maximo, it might be SAP, whatever it might be. We give you documentation and a flow for how you can move from one system to another. And I think it's tomorrow that you and Aaron have that demo theater.
Thursday afternoon.
Thursday afternoon. There's a demo theater in the main showcase area that will really focus in on how you could use the Python API to do that. But they're just features in a feature service. So you could actually use ArcGIS Pro if you'd like to do that as well. We just kind of give you those guidelines on how best to create the assignments. So the scripting process, that back-end planning process, is one that's really good for automation. And then as you're using the back office web application, you can start to do or handle that unplanned work that pops up. Maybe it still comes through your work management system, but some of that doesn't, and it's available for you to kind of just manually create work assignments like Craig was showing you earlier. So what's the detail around the project itself? Well, we do provide in that same back office web application the ability for you to create new workforce projects. I think Craig had said in a demonstration last year that it takes about 25 minutes to manually create a project because the process itself creates a series of feature services, a series of web maps, organizes the users into groups, create groups, and all of that information to do it manually inside of ArcGIS Online is a very arduous process. So we provide a simple wizard for you that will let you stand up that project pretty quickly. You can do things like configure the assignment types that you need to complete in the field, and give them kind of these user-friendly names, and then associate the applications that you want to attach to doing that work right down to that type level. That's a fairly recent addition to the product. We have these roles we've been talking about dispatchers and mobile workers. So in that application, that back office web app, you can add those workers into the project. And for the mobile workers, you can add a little bit more to their identity than what a specific named user's identity has today. Things like their contact information, and maybe something about their skill set. And that's useful information not only in the back office, but also in the field. So by having someone's contact information, in the mobile application, you could search for another mobile worker and potentially call them or text them because you have that contact detail right there in the application itself. You can do things to configure the experience. So I think in the Utilities Kingston project, you just were looking at work assignments, but you can overlay additional layers into the map for the dispatcher and for the mobile worker. When you add them into the dispatcher map, then you can actually create assignments directly off of those features. So if it was a bunch of hydrants or utility assets that you needed to do inspections on, you could select those and then automatically kind of create in bulk these work assignments directly with the application if you want. Also, in associating the applications in that same kind of tab you'll see when Craig does his second demo are the location tracks. So by default, we're always we're kind of recording the last known location of the mobile worker, and that happens in the worker's feature service. But optionally in the advanced tab, you can store their location tracks, and you can determine at what interval you want to do that. And when you do that, it happens in the background. So if the app actually gets backgrounded, it needs to be running, but if it's in the background, we'll still record their location tracks. So you have that information, and it has a date timestamp and an accuracy associated with it. So you could actually, we do have a Python script that actually shows this as well. You could see, was Craig at the location of the work that he did when he did it? Or was he sitting in the Hilton Bayfront Lounge as he was going off and marking fire hydrants? So in the dispatcher application, I think you saw a bunch of that already. You can individually create new work assignments, and there's multiple different ways to do that by address, using the map and whatnot. Or you can do them in bulk, either within the app or using scripts. There's also a flow to a work assignment. There's different states to it. So you can go from kind of an unassigned state to assigning the work. When the mobile worker actually starts a work assignment, they take ownership of it, and it becomes in progress. And then you as a dispatcher can't modify its state when they own it. And then they can complete the assignment. And then we also have some scripts that let you manage the completed work. So part of it's getting the work in the system, the other part is getting it back out. So you can use the scripts to kind of query what's been completed and pull that back out. Because over time, that feature service is going to grow exponentially as more and more work gets done. The dispatching app can also kind of serve a little bit as a monitoring application. You know where the location of each worker is. You know how far they are away from different work that you want to potentially assign to them. So you can get a state of what's happening with your mobile workforce in real time. If you complement that with, like Craig had said, with say a dashboard using Operations Dashboard, then you can have this kind of real-time awareness of how much work is getting completed over the course of a day, and use that dashboard information to kind of help drive better assignment of work using both the map and the state of the mobile worker. And with that, I'm really reluctant, but I'm going to hand it back to Craig for yet another demo. Ooh. When did you want, Craig? For?
Okay, so I'm going to take you through, sort of show you how I created everything previously with the demo that I just showed. So I'm currently now in what we call the project owner role. So we really did define these 3 distinct roles with Workforce. I talked about the dispatcher and the mobile worker. This is the project owner. Probably a lot of you in the audience, GIS administrators, people responsible with ArcGIS Online organizations, creating content, disseminating that content out within your organization. This was the workflow we had in mind for you and really tailoring this for you. So I'm going to go and create my project here. I'll call it my UC Meter 2017. Give it a bit of a summary. This is for Tech Workshop 1. And then I'll go create that project. So like Jeff said, what this is doing is creating a collection of 4 feature services, 2 web maps, and the Workforce project item, putting it all into a folder, creating a group, and sharing it with a group. I've created more of these than anybody on the planet manually, like Jeff said, and it takes me like 25 minutes, and half the time I make a mistake. So you would make lots of mistakes. So just being honest, right? You totally would. So what we wanted to do is make it really seamless and easy for you to get up and running with projects. Because how many people want their business card to say feature service creator, right? No, you probably don't want that, even though that's what you do a lot, right? You manage scheming, manage data. We wanted to make this really easy to get up and running. So I've just gone and created this project and set everything up for me, so I'm all set to go. Now the next thing I need to do is create the different assignment types or the work types that are here. This is actually where Carrie and Carl sat down and talked about how the workers do their work and what the different types are, right? Inspection only, water meter change, gas meter change. So this is for the UC, so we could do some things like presentation. We could make one attendance. I can't type in front of this many people like Rohit did in front of 15,000 the other day without making all those mistakes. The last one I'll do is like closing party. There we go. So I can quickly go and add a couple. Now for anybody who knows feature services and that schema and how everything's set up, we're using a coded value domain behind the scenes to create this. We've already created that coded value domain for you. We just go and populate these behind the scenes and set them up. If you want these particular work types to equate to particular integer values in that coded value domain, you can do what we all love doing, which is hitting the REST endpoint and editing the JSON. It's always a good day when you get to do that, right? That's where you could go and actually change those coded value domains. We really don't hear that a whole lot, that you need to tie that in. But if that's something that you think you're needing to do or has come up, we'd love to hear that afterwards. We wanted to keep this really easy and just keep it focused on the work that you're doing and set it up. The next thing I need to do is configure the users. So I had pre-configured the project that I showed, right? I didn't show any of this. I was a dispatcher in it. I was actually signed in as myself, creating and dispatching the work, and I'd already had some workers set up for it. We create the owner as the dispatcher so that you can open up the project, give it a try, see how it works, right? Create some assignments in it, test it out a little bit ahead of time. But you can go and add some other workers in here, so I'll go and pick Jeff, and I'll make him a dispatcher as well. And I can go and select a couple workers. I'll pick our project manager. Mabel's a field worker, and then Heather, I'll add her as well. And last, I'll add, no, I'm going to add some Esri people in the audience to do stuff. Let's add Dawit, as we don't trust him, so we'll put him as a worker. Yeah, don't want to make him a dispatcher. So I can go and quickly add these. So what this has done behind the scenes is it's gone and written the information into the feature services that manage that worker information. It's also invited them into the group and added them automatically, so you don't have to manage that yourselves, okay? So the group is what we're using to control access to the project. So only these 5 users will see this project, okay? If someone else in the room, like let's say Scott signed in, he would not see it because he hasn't been added to the project, okay? So you can control who has access to it and who can see that. Like Jeff mentioned, you can also go and add some additional details for the workers, like their contact number, okay?
Dawit, what's your phone number? We can just give everybody your phone number.
I think it's 202. We can also give them a job title and add some notes and skills about it as well. The reason that you'd add the contact number in there is so that the dispatcher could easily call. Maybe you're running Skype, right? You can actually call right from the web app and contact that worker on the device.
The pool of users that populate here
Yeah, so the question... Yeah, so the question was, you haven't specified, a group or a subgroup. So who's this list actually pulling from? This is every user in your organization to populate in, okay? And then once you add them, like when I added Dawit to it, what that did behind the scenes, and I'll show this in a second, is invited them to the group automatically and set up. So this workflow works really well when you've got a manageable set, right? But maybe you've got 40 workers you want to pull in, okay? And set that up. So there's a couple ways to do that. First of all, we've got a Python script that helps you with it to be able to script it and load all those workers in. The other one is, that's actually something we're really interested in talking about. If you've got predefined groups of workers that you've maybe set up within a hierarchy already within your organization, and you just want to say, get everybody in that group and bring them all in as workers. Or maybe you've taken advantage of one of the online capabilities of taking a CSV file to invite users into the organization. We also want to hear if that's a workflow. So if that is a workflow you're interested in, please come up afterwards so we can talk to that. That's something that we'd like to take a look at.
Checkbox. Maybe explain the checkbox.
This one?
Checkbox.
Oh, I was getting to the checkbox. Oh. So the checkbox. I actually thought that's what your question was going to be. I was all set for that. So how many people invite users from other organizations to collaborate with things? Right, just a few. Okay, so we hear this with Workforce quite a bit, actually. You have contractors joining that you want to hire, okay? They may already have a named user in another organization. You want to invite them in. So you can do that. By unchecking that, now I'm searching everybody in online who's made their named user profile publicly searchable. So I can go and search for me in that's really easy, in Jeff's organization. I can go and add myself as a mobile worker. Now when you see I do that, you can see that I've only been invited to the project. We don't have the ability, because otherwise people just get spammed with invites all over the place, right? Now I have to go in and log in as that named user in this other organization and actually accept the invitation. When I do, I'm now available and accessible to work in this Workforce project. Okay? So it's a way to invite contractors in, for example. That's a real common use case. We hear other people from other organizations to collaborate in. Actually, Taylor Shellfish, Aaron, showed a really good example of that. She was inviting in the users from the Native American tribes that they work with to actually perform that water and health quality sampling. Okay? So it's a really good example of collaborating and pulling in people from other organizations. Now at this time, my project's complete and I could go and open up and use it, but there's a couple other things that I just want to highlight here in the 45 minutes that we have remaining. So the other piece is the Advanced tab, right? And this is where I can set up the app integrations that I showed before. So when I expand this out, you can see a couple things. The first one is that every project comes with Navigator configured. Does this mean we're charging you for a Navigator license and you're paying for something right now or using up credits? No. Okay. It just means if you've used Navigator and if you purchased a Navigator license and you have it on your device like I had, it's available and accessible to them. Okay. If it isn't, you could just leave it as is or you could remove it. Okay. We wanted to add that as a quick and easy way to get up and running. But the other parts are in terms of integrating with Collector and Survey123, and I just want to walk through that workflow a little bit. So the first one I'll do is I'll actually go and integrate with a Collector web map. So now it's asking me to pick which Collector web map, it's only Tuesday, I want to associate with this project, right? So in this case, I'm going to go and look for the one that I had set up before. So this is that meter exchange program. So I'm going to select that and hit next. Now what it's asking me for is this. It's asking me to indicate whether this web map should be available for all assignments in the project or specific assignments based on the work type or the assignment type. Okay? This is what allowed me to launch Survey for just the inspection and then Collector for the water meter, right? So we see this come up a lot for sites who want to use both, okay? But also for sites, that example I gave before, right? The valve exercising. One thing we heard is, do you know how hot it is in Nevada in July, Craig? If they don't need to use Collector, why is it there? Why is that option there? Just make it easy for them, right? That was the other reason, okay? You can really dig into and specify so that Collector is only available for the work types, the work assignments that it's valid for. Same thing with Survey123, okay? So it means that the options available to your mobile workers are the ones that are relevant to that work assignment that they're doing. So in this case, I'll just select the whole project, okay, and it'll go and add it and write that into the JSON. And then I could do the same thing for Survey123. But the last thing I want to show is actually the location tracking. So I could go in here and choose to configure this. By default, we don't enable it. We don't enable it by default. What we found when we first released Workforce was that you didn't know this was turned on, and you just got a bunch of tracks, and then you said, why is this service so large? Okay, so we turned it off in one of our updates. So now every project you get comes with this disabled. You have to go in and choose to enable it. And then you can also go and set the interval where it's going to go and drop a track. So think about the location of your workers like this. There's actually two concepts there. There's their last known location, and that's the location on the map where they're moving. It's the last time we heard from the device and it gave us a location. Now that I've enabled my location tracks, that last known location gets written to a separate feature service as well. It's the breadcrumb trail, okay? And a really good way to demonstrate that is actually to show what we've been doing this week. I've been walking around testing some R&D projects that we've been working on. So this is San Diego, and this is actually a couple different layers, but I'm going to show this one here in particular. This is actually the tracks that all of us who've been walking around San Diego and coming here have been doing. So you can see as I move through time, I've actually got the time slider set up to do it in day chunks. You can see different people come in. That's Jeff and I showing up on Friday and Saturday. And then you can see on Sunday, we really didn't make it very far because we were busy doing stuff. And then Sunday, other people felt like finally showing up and helping us out. So other team members came in from Redlands and other areas in orange and yellow. And then moving forward for the day, you could see we got more people coming in as well. So we're able to see those tracks through time. This layer, like all the layers in Workforce, is editor tracking enabled. So you're able to see who's going where and what the date timestamp on it is. So that's what I'm using to move through here. Okay? So a really good example of being able to use those tracks to be able to see where people's gone. The question was, this is the best presentation I've seen this week. Yes. So the question was, that service needs to live in a web map that Collector is already set up. We're not doing anything related to Collector here. Collector has a way to do location tracks. That's a previous implementation of it. Workforce has its own way of doing tracks that's completely taken care of. So when that web map was configured, and if I can just for a second, I'm going to jump out to the organization that I've got set up, and we're going to go and find that particular project that I created. Go back to content. UC meter 2017. Oh, that's dedicated. Let me head out to content here. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. We'll scroll down to the bottom. There's that UC meter 2017. Here's all the items that were created. Okay. Here's the tracks feature service that I've got set up here. And if I go and open up my workers web map, you'll actually see that the tracks layer is there and set up. So Workforce is taking care of it for you. Okay? You don't have to go and add the tracks. You don't have to set any of that up. It creates that web map predefined for you. You can see that the symbology that I had set up for the worker's location, also the assignments, is all pre-set up, right? We take care of all this for you. That's what that progress bar was doing. I really meant it when I said it takes like 25 minutes and you make a mistake half the time. This was really the genesis of why we had to do this, okay? So we set all that up. And we actually learned from, Jeff's the product manager for Collector as well. We learned from that experience of how, and the difficulties you ran into with tracks. We wanted to just bake it in, make it dead simple. All you have to do is, like I showed, you go into the back office, you check that on, you set the interval, you're done. You're laying breadcrumbs for where people have gone. Now, why do you want to do that? Okay? There's a couple reasons. Yeah, you want to know that people are where they say they were when they did the work, right? That's one negative, really cynical way of looking at it, but it's the reality in a lot of cases. You want to make sure that's done, okay? On a municipal example, one really good case is, hey, that garbage truck destroyed my front lawn, right? Well, when did that happen, sir? That happened last Wednesday. Well, we now pull up the tracks for that city vehicle and we see nobody was near it, right, at that time. So it's a way of actually showing compliance and how things were done and when. But another really good example is for end-of-day assessments and assessment with work, okay? So being able to say, where did people go? Think about damage assessment scenarios. Maybe when you have a flooding situation, you're sending out first responders to go and take a quick assessment of the area. What better way of figuring out what areas were covered than by showing the breadcrumbs that I showed? Now they don't have to tell you, yeah, I actually took a left on that street instead of a right because I couldn't get past there. You see their tracks. Now you can quickly turn that around and figure out which areas you didn't cover. Is there a limit to the number of points? How many credits do you have, Jimmy? Yeah, I mean, there is, it's a good question in terms of the size of the feature service. We've seen it get up quite large. It is something that you want to manage and be aware of. One actually really good technique that a customer we were talking to a little while ago used is every Sunday they have a Python script that exports that tracks out to a file geodatabase and they archive that off. Then they call truncate and truncate it off because that's available to you at the REST endpoint as an admin as well and through Python. So you can cut that off. So they're only ever going a week long, and that file geodatabase is what they go and look at their archive. Then if they only need to go back like every 60 days, so they're just trimming it as they go. That's a really good workflow that we see and people using. So that's all I want to show here. Jeff has a couple more slides that he wants to show. I'm going to pass it back to him so we can finish up.
So I just wanted to kind of go back to the anatomy of this workforce project for a second. One of the things that we've done is we've actually published the schema for the workforce project. It's documented. Feel free to take pictures of it if you'd like, but the documentation is out there for it as well. But you can kind of see the list of what all is actually created and managed for you as part of that work in creating the project that Craig was showing you earlier. And having the schema available is really important for you when you're looking at how to script against it. And now we recommend that you don't modify the fields that are on these layers yourself today, but you can potentially add to it. So if you wanted to add additional fields onto the assignments layer, have at it. In fact, we have some partners that are doing this kind of work as well. If you get the chance, also on Wednesday and Thursday, they've got a scheduled list. Go take a look at what CityWorks has been doing with Workforce and Collector and Survey. Well, I haven't done anything with Survey123, but they're using our URL scheme like we are doing with Workforce to interact with their own applications as well. So really cool way to kind of look at the ways you could take advantage of Workforce. The last thing I wanted to mention is our roadmap. So we do have a minor release planned for Q3. Really important that, and it's going to happen before it, is that we have yet to support ArcGIS Enterprise, right? The Workforce back office application that Craig's been showing you here is integrated into ArcGIS Online. Well, it's going to have its own standalone setup that we'll put onto the My Esri portal. We're very close to finishing certification on that, and it will be supported with ArcGIS Enterprise 10.5.1. It will require 10.5.1. It won't be supported with an earlier version of ArcGIS Enterprise. We do have a few things that we want to do in this minor release that I mentioned. Like the ability to do that assignment at the type level is really important. But the other feature that we get asked for quite often is, I want to be able to, as you launch Collector or launch Survey123, pass information about that work assignment into those other applications and pre-populate what collection activity is going to happen. Because I do want to manage things like a work ID to link that between the assignment and the work that gets done, right? So that's a bit of information that we're doing. Also is, Craig doesn't complete a lot of work assignments when he goes out into the field. And we've questioned as to why that happens. And apparently that's a requirement that other people have too. So you'll be able to kind of document with photos, maybe it's why I completed it or how I completed it or why I couldn't complete it in Craig's case. So you'll be able to attach media to the assignments themselves. And then we're really focusing in on, and I've cut a big asterisk next to it, our next major release, where there's two key aspects that we're focusing in on. Improvements to location tracking as kind of one of the fundamental drivers. More work will come from it than just that, though. And really important is offline support, which isn't there today. You can lose connectivity with Workforce in the field now, and we'll throw a little banner up that says you've lost connectivity, but you can't change the state of a work assignment. And those location tracks are no longer persisted on the mobile device. You're lost. You're lost in connectivity mode. Lost connectivity mode. So that's kind of our roadmap and where we're headed. That's the last part of the session. We do have this survey form for you to fill out. Of course, you're going to rate us really highly. If you don't, our name is Ishmael Shavite and Chris LeSueur, so just make sure you make note of that when you rate those bad comments. But any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of pointed out a really kind of important thing. I know Collector is currently enabled to do offline editing. So if you have some sort of workflow by which you're sort of calling out to Collector from workflow rather, then that's kind of it becomes a moot point. I mean, if your Collector project it allows offline mode editing, then it's not, and that's your fieldwork for that area. Then, yeah.
So I should explain that in the workflow today, when you start the day and you have your list of work assignments, we'll kind of cache that work assignment list on your device. So if you've lost connectivity, you can go to the assignment details, you can launch Collector, and that Collector map can be completely offline. The survey form can be completely offline. Navigator works offline. The one bit that's missing there, I can't change the state of the work assignment until I've got that connectivity back. So I could take my work assignments out. I could pre-plan that I've got Collector and Survey and Navigator on my device with the areas I'm going to. Do all my field work. When I get back into connectivity, mark them all. Yeah, you just won't be able to leverage those date timestamps in any way, or the location tracks, right? But that's one of the main focuses of what's coming next. So. The tracking is not working when you're disconnected. No, yeah. Yeah, you're going to take it?
Yeah, so the question was, is there a way to send out a notification to a mobile worker when an assignment's dispatched? If the mobile worker is running Workforce, they'll get an in-app notification. So are you talking about on-device or system notifications? Okay, so the question was, been asked to do it, we've got access to the text or email. Could we send them a text for it or something along those lines? Some of the work that we're doing that Jeff touched on a little bit in terms of the future is, right now Workforce isn't taking advantage of push notifications. So it's doing more of a polling. So it goes and requests and says, hey, is there something I need? Is there something I need? The worker can do an on-demand pull as well and actually pull down on the list to query the assignments. But that push isn't going out, right? So we're not pushing directly to the device. That is some work that we're doing right now to actually push that into the platform and also into the app so that push notification goes out to them. When it does, I think a lot of those requests for sending a text or sending an email will go away because that's fundamentally using the same technology, right? To push a text or push an email out to that worker. Yeah. Now they'll be able to get actually notifications on the device just like they would, say, through AccuWeather or other apps that are sending you out notifications that appear on your lock screen. Yeah. We'll do the same sort of thing so that even if you're not running the Workforce app, you can be sent notifications for it. So that's sort of the direction that we're going in with it. If you were interested in doing something along the lines of actually pushing out to an email or to text messaging system, really GeoEvent Server is the way to go for that, because that actually gives you that level of control to be able to push out to specific devices and specific users and emails based on conditions that are met. But I really think that once we get the push notifications in line with Workforce, I think a lot of those requests will go away, because there is some things with GeoEvent that's required to get it up and running that make it a little difficult just for sending emails for things like that. Yes. Yeah, so today if you have the Workforce app open, you'll see that in-app notification and that badge come up. Yeah, and where we want to get to is so that even if it's not running, you'll get a notification on the device, so you'll get that vibration, that sound, just like you would with a text or an email. Yeah. Where in the development timeline is that? That is actually stuff that we are doing right now in R&D phase to kind of see how that works in the platform and how we're going to do that. That's something that we're really hoping for later this year to get out. It is really timed with some of that offline work that Jeff was talking about along the same lines. So yeah, we're really hoping for later this year. Yeah.
You mentioned enterprise. Is it going to be as simple as it was with 4 steps? Can you deal with enterprise?
Super simple. Yeah, the question was, is it going to be as simple with enterprise as those 4 steps? Yeah, I mean, I think once, like Jeff mentioned, it's a separate setup, separate install on 10.5.1. But then after that, the experience on the website is identical. There's no difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that question comes up once in a while. Now, I want to ask you back, is that your inference on it, or have you actually put Workforce and Collector in their hands and had them give you that feedback? Okay. And can you describe where that starts to fall apart for them? Yeah, because right. Right. The reason I had asked that, because when we demonstrate the product, it looks like a lot of transitions between the applications. It's hard to demo mobile apps, as you probably have discovered, right? When you can get into a workshop context where they are hands-on with it, and you realize that, it takes time to get to the location of that work, and you want an app that's dedicated to navigating to it. It's probably sitting in a mount on the dash. And the work that you do in Collector or Survey123 takes a sequence of time to do that. It becomes less of a concern. But we demo it all together really quickly in a few minutes, and it makes that transition look awkward. I think one of the aspects as a whole for our suite of apps is that each of the applications that we're building can either stand alone or work together. And there are ways to improve that integration, and we're working on that. And where applications need the same functionality, we'll put them in it. But we don't have direction to put all of the applications into one app. Yeah. So, but it's good to hear the the pain points of where those challenges exist so we can make that transition more seamless, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you want to add to that at all?
No, that was perfect.
Okay.
Are we still being recorded? That was an okay answer.
Yeah.
So the question was, has there been any research in terms of integrating with GeoVent? I mean, what we have today integrates with GeoVent, right? You think, well, think of Workforce as just, it's simply the funnel that's sending those tracks into the platform, into the feature surface, right? Are you guys tired of hearing about the platform yet? I don't know. It's only Tuesday, right? So, but it's what's pushing it into the feature surface, right? Into that platform so that you can build a connector from GeoVent to do whatever you need to do with it. In terms of the size, though, that's a little different from GeoVent's perspective. GeoVent is very good at handling that stream services and large input of data. We don't see the tracks at the same level as the stream services, though, just because of the volume of data that you're dealing with. Even our largest site today, 700, 800 or so workers, right? Even that, it's not at GeoVent's level. Where we do see going is that the relational data store can only handle so much. In terms of the tracks as well. So we're looking at moving towards more of a NoSQL implementation on the back end for it that would pair well with things like Insights and GeoVent Server for that. Yeah. So for the ID, is it possible to generate an ID? Oh man, you talked too long. I didn't get to talk about it. So there's a couple of things you can do with that, right? One is if the assignments are coming in from another system, right? They're not coming in, you're generating them yourself right there. Okay, so that's coming. What we're going to use for that is the arcade language that's now available in the platform, and you can see it through label expressions. That's going to allow us to set that up on the pop-up so that you'll be able to define the language for it, what those are. Maybe you want to say, I actually don't care what the value is, it just needs a unique value, right? Or maybe you've got some fields that you'll concatenate together. But that's coming with Arcade, but we've got to wait for it to make its way through the platform into the runtime, so then we can consume it on Workforce. So maybe later it's next year. It's 2018. Yeah, it'll be early 2018 is when we want to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh. That's a good.
They're not. Yeah. They're similar but not identical. You'll see them become more similar moving forward, like Collector, Navigator, and Workforce will have very similar logins. Survey123 will be a little bit different, but that's good feedback for us to get to the survey team that having that same login. So when you say login, do you mean sort of how they get to that sign-in page or the sign-in page itself, or?
The sign-in process, probably, too.
Yeah. 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 Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to just maybe put words in your mouth there, but you would prefer that it's just one sign-in for all of those applications, right? Yeah.
That was leading the
Well, I mean, it was obvious.
I'm
that
sorry,
was
I
what she was
object.
after.
That is a leading
I'm
question.
leading the witness.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm leading the
I'm just going to put words in your mouth. Do you want us to do this?
Yeah. They use the same account in each one as well, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Wanna let Chris ask a question?
Yeah, Chris.
Rebuttal, I'd like to treat Greg as a hostile witness.
I don't.
Thank you.
Single sign-on is absolutely the thing. Also, we've been asking for the check mark
Yeah.
to be able to remember their information. Our troopers are about to tag me for having to type in their login information every single time I hit the workforce.
Yeah, we hear it as well. It's something that we have to take a look at. Yeah.
So it's something I'm feeling that.
Well, hopefully we can address it before that happens.
One thing I just want to hand out to the ones that were talking about the tracking layers, be very conscious of that. If you've got large teams, we have 800 troopers who run 24-hour shifts, 7, 24, 55. So I'll just give you a magic number. We create 18,144,000 records a week in that tracking location if you have it turned on. So be mindful of that. Watch it because it will eat up credit fast once it starts to grow.
Cool. Well, I think 4 seconds of silence is probably good to say thank you all for coming, and have a good rest of your conference. Thanks.